Chapter 750. Is the spirit beast speaking the truth? Are you sure, senior brother? Asked Shijiang in astonishment. She still didn't understand the senior before her. He was just an inner sect disciple and a mere guardian of the spirit herb garden. Why venture into the depths? Soon she understood. There were rewards and achievements for this. She had heard that this senior was frequently summoned to the law enforcement hall. Without achievements, it was very risky for him. He had managed to come out safely multiple times only due to his achievements. He hadn't achieved anything for a long time. He urgently needed some accomplishments. It was somewhat understandable. But she didn't know the details. She had only heard it from other disciples. The sect was so vast and filled with many legendary figures. This particular individual had no connection with her, so there was no necessity to pay attention to him. In the Cliff of Broken Hearts, she knew Han Ming and had been paying attention. The opponent was strong. If they fought, it would be difficult to win. She had wanted to meet this person before. Unfortunately, they were in seclusion. If I don't come out for a long time, junior sister, you should take the others and leave. Clearing out the demons isn't easy, Jiang Hao said. This made Shijiang and the others frown. What was going on with him? Why would he care about them and urge them to leave quickly? At that moment, Jiang Hao looked into the distance and observed the increase in demonic aura. Something was peculiar. Perhaps the forest was the boundary of distortion. Do not enter the forest. If you see anything, quickly evacuate, Jiang Hao said. Since he had brought them in, it was only fitting for him to instruct them. After they nodded, Jiang Hao rode his sword into the depths. Although he didn't know what was inside, the danger was certain. Watching Jiang Hao leave, Tan Baiyu was somewhat puzzled. Why is the senior doing this? I've heard that this senior practices the blood wish path. I wonder if it's related, Qian Dongjie said. I think it might have to do with achievements, Wen Feng said. Regardless of the reason, they couldn't go deeper. After all, this senior hadn't led them into peril, which was good. Let's begin preparations. We hunt demons without entering the forest, Shijiang said. The others didn't object. As for whether Jiang Hao would return alive, they weren't certain, yet they didn't dwell on it. Doing what needed to be done and keeping an escape route was the most crucial thing right now. Talent and cultivation were all reliant on staying alive. Once dead, even if you had outstanding cultivation and talent, they would be of no use whatsoever. Death meant death. At the Bright Moon sect, the stars swirled into an endless ocean at the star platform. A figure manifested within the sea of stars but disappeared in an instant. Soon after, crackling sounds echoed from the boundless stars. Boom! A tremendous explosion shook everything. The night turned into day, and the Ancient One's figure emerged from it. He had tried to come out but couldn't. Now, he seemed somewhat weary. He sat cross-legged and waited. With such a significant event occurring here, it would naturally attract the sect's attention. Sure enough. Figures ADD'd from afar. What happened? Asked a middle-aged man. The Ancient One sighed as he looked at them. At the foot of the mountain, Shu Bai looked up and sighed. It seems there's no good news. I wonder how the sect will respond. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl was indeed beginning to affect the southern region. The Bright Moon sect held a meeting. What was discussed there was unknown to others, but the sect's treasure had been activated. Some seniors who had been in seclusion also came out. All this happened quietly. No one would have known about the sect's actions if they hadn't paid close attention. The sect master of the Bright Moon sect left the sect and went to the Clear Sky School. A magical artifact connected with the Astronomical Academy and the Mountain Sea Sword sect in the north. A plan known only to a very few was unfolding. At that moment, Shu Bai seemed to understand a bit why there were no immortal sects in the south. The east, west, and north surrounded the south. It seemed like they were waiting for something. In the south, inside a vast cave, corpses lay everywhere. They were both human and beast. At the center, there was a green sphere emitting a faint light. It was seemingly resonating with something. Moreover, there were signs of struggle. An elder below was stunned at the scene. Then, he burst into laughter. It's done. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl is showing fluctuations. Ha ha ha. After that, he ordered the others to continue the sacrifice. At that moment, everyone was extremely excited. If they succeeded, the South would soon become history. Continue. It won't be long before we get what we want, the elder shouted. Numerous people below echoed in response. Deep within the forest, Zhang Shijiu took out a rejuvenation talisman and began healing. They leaned against the trees, having no energy left even to set up a formation. The 4 people were heavily injured. The demons' cultivation wasn't too high, but their numbers were overwhelming. Moreover, for some reason, the forest seemed boundless. It was as if everything was being swallowed by the forest and becoming a part of it. Xiao Li held the beast and looked at the other 3. Senior brother, senior sister, can't you defeat the demons? Xiao Li looked like a girl of 11 or 12. Zhang 19 sighed. Yes, we can't defeat them anymore. They'll be here soon. Yu Yu and Xin Yue bowed their heads. Their injuries were severe, and escape was nearly impossible. There was a problem with this forest. They understood the problem but couldn't solve it. They thought the mission would be simple, but everything exceeded their expectations. Why don't we ask the beast for help, then? Xiao Li placed the beast in front of Zhang Shijiu. Beast has many friends and holds considerable influence. The 4 looked at Xiao Li. They were unable to speak for a moment. I never lie, Xiao Li said seriously. You may not lie, but you seem unable to distinguish between real and imaginary. Everyone thought that but didn't say anything. Roar. The demon's roars echoed from afar. Xiao Li was a bit anxious. Quick. As the beast if there is a way. This Zhang Shijiu and the others felt awkward, but considering this was a Golden Core Realm great demon, they eventually gave in. Respected beast, you can call me Lord Beast, said the beast as it munched on a carrot. Lord Beast. Do you have a solution? Zhang Shijiu asked. When you encounter a demon, just invoke my name. They won't bother you after that. Everyone knows that, said the beast confidently. You see. Xiao Li said seriously. As long as we hold the beast in front, they'll recognize us as the beast's friends and spare us out of respect. Saying so, Xiao Li walked into the crowd. Then, she sat in the middle and gazed into the distance. At that moment, footsteps sounded, and numerous demons rushed over. In an instant, Zhang Shijiu and the others panicked. They couldn't move. This was bad. Don't be afraid. The beast is here, Xiao Li said firmly. Zhang Shijiu and the others felt this young girl was too naive. The next moment, the demons charged towards them. Unexpectedly, the demons rushed right past them. Just like that, they passed by. It seemed as though they genuinely respected the beast and refrained from attacking them. Suddenly, everyone looked at the spirit beast. Could it have been telling the truth all along? Chapter 751. The Master is here. The spirit beast nibbled on a carrot. Are there young ladies of immense wealth among the demons? This question puzzled Zhang Shijiu and the others. However, after witnessing the spirit beast's power, they didn't dare to ignore its question. There probably aren't any. What does the esteemed spirit beast intend to do? Asked Xin Yue. Eat people. Isn't it normal for great demons to eat people? The spirit beast said. At that moment, everyone felt that the spirit beast was not as easygoing as it appeared. Did you just doubt my influence? The spirit beast suddenly frowned and asked. The 4 of them quickly shook their heads. They definitely couldn't admit to that. Perhaps you haven't realized that you're traveling with the future great demon. I'm a powerful being of heaven and earth. I, the spirit beast, am honest and never lie, declared the spirit beast with great righteousness. Xiao Li nodded in agreement. Zhang Shijiu and the others exchanged glances. They felt more and more convinced that the other party was deceiving them. But the reality was right in front of them. Yu Yu hesitated. If there are demons who are not your friends, what should we do? If they're not my friends, we don't need to be polite to them. Just punch them away. Xiao Li earnestly waved her little fists. The 4 of them were speechless. Things were getting more and more absurd. After the demons passed by, The group started debating which direction to take. They realized that the forests and the sky here were somewhat different from what they knew. The previous path might not have been correct. Was the demon we just encountered different from the ones we met before? Duanyu suddenly asked. What's different about them? Xin Yue asked. They seemed to be fleeing, Zheng Shijiu said. If they were indeed fleeing, then there was a problem. Did the demon just now ignore them, or did the spirit beast truly do something? Or, perhaps both. Regardless, they couldn't offend the spirit beast. They still had to rely on it for protection. Let's follow them. If they are fleeing in that direction for survival, then that must be the right path, Yu suggested. The group didn't hesitate and immediately followed the demons. But shortly after catching up, they sensed a powerful aura nearby. A stronger presence emerged from within. Boom! The aura, like a storm, directly shattered the influence of the spirit beast. Many demons stopped in their tracks and turned to look at the spirit beast and its group. The spirit beast sighed. Demons who aren't our friends have appeared. Only then did Zheng Shijiu and the others understand that it was indeed the spirit beast's influence that had spared them just now. But now, someone had interfered. There was no escape. Spirit beast, do you have another way? Xin Yue asked. The spirit beast, munching on a carrot, casually said, for those who aren't our friends, we don't need to show them respect. Let Xiao Li handle them. The four of them looked at Xiao Li. Although they knew Xiao Li was extraordinary, this place wasn't for someone in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. There were others in the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm, and even at the early and middle stage of the Golden Core realm. Xiao Li, despite her remarkable abilities, couldn't be that powerful here. Xiao Li pouted and walked toward the demons. She was fearless. For her, just punching her opponents was enough. Roar. A roar sounded as the demon charged at Xiao Li. Without hesitation, Xiao Li threw a punch at it. Zheng Shijiu and the others were very concerned for her. Was it really safe for her to charge at a demon when she was only in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm? A fist struck out. Demonic energy surged. A thunderous sound echoed all around as the encroaching demons were instantly cut in half. Others were stunned. Even Xiao Li herself was dumbfounded. How did her fist become so powerful? What just happened, beast? She asked the spirit beast. The spirit beast shouted, "This is the demon showing respect to the master. Don't worry too much about it. Master's friends understand the rules of the world." Xiao Li didn't understand, but Zheng Shijiu and the others did. The master of the spirit beast had arrived. Immediately after, they saw a figure descend from behind Xiao Li. Master, the spirit beast immediately exclaimed. "Do you want some carrots?" Xiao Li was taken aback. She turned to look behind her. When she saw Jiang Hao, she was worried. She quickly placed her hands behind her back. Then, she remembered she hadn't stolen any fruits. In an instant, she stopped worrying and said hastily, "Senior brother." Jiang Hao held a knife and looked at Xiao Li. She looked somehow guilty when she saw him appear suddenly. He didn't understand how the spirit beast could have brought her here. Fortunately, he arrived on time. If Xiao Li had acted just now, it would have drawn too much attention. Xiao Li was a true disciple, so it was natural for her to be more powerful than the others. However, going against Golden Core demons would have raised some eyebrows when she was only at the Foundation Establishment realm. With her Dragon Pearl, anyone above or beyond the Golden Core realm would have turned to ashes, regardless of how powerful they were. "Have you completed the mission?" Jiang Hao asked. "Yes. The seniors cleared out the demons, and I cooked for them," Xiao Li said seriously as though she was reporting her good deeds to her parents. Jiang Hao looked at her and felt that most of that food might have ended up in Xiao Li's stomach. Without asking any more questions, he approached Zheng Shijiu and the others. "Are you all okay, seniors?" "We're fine. Nothing big happened." Zheng Shijiu quickly shook his head. He never expected Jiang Hao to appear here. "Good. Please follow me," Jiang Hao said. He flew on his sword and roughly understood the distortion of this place. It was easy to enter and leaving wasn't that difficult either. They could leave as long as their perception wasn't affected by the distortion. With the knowledge from the Nameless manual, his perception had become quite extraordinary. Xiao Li immediately picked up the spirit beast and followed him. Xin Yuyue and Zhang Shijiu breathed a sigh of relief. They had followed Jiang Hao on several missions and had always gotten to safety. This time, if nothing unexpected happened, it should be the same. However, Duan Yu didn't share this feeling. He still found it difficult to escape from this place. How did you come here, junior brother Jiang? Zhang Shijiu asked. Devil's Den has undergone major changes. This place is no longer manageable for cultivators like us. I came to investigate the source of the changes, Jiang Hao said truthfully. Master, the spiritual energy here doesn't show me respect, the spirit beast said immediately. Jiang Hao nodded slightly. Indeed, the spiritual energy here was changing. Senior brother Jiang, when will we eat? Xiao Li asked softly. Her stomach started rumbling. Jiang Hao glanced at her and took out some dried meat. Xiao Li was excited. I'll take you to where the other fellow disciples are later. Remember to follow them and absolutely do not enter the forest again. Otherwise, you won't be able to get out, Jiang Hao said. At that moment, some demons noticed them and began to attack. The demonic sounds echoed. All the demons were swiftly cut down in the blink of an eye. His strength was overwhelming. It made them feel suffocated. This was no longer an ordinary middle-stage golden core realm cultivator. Zhang Shijiu understood this the most. Time flew by, and the one who was only at the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm once had unknowingly surpassed everyone. Chapter 752. The Demoness finally appears. Jiang Hao walked along the road. The strength of the demons wasn't that prominent. They were unable to survive for too long under his blade. Fortunately, there were no stronger ones around. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to engage with them. Duan Yu, following behind, felt a bit stunned. It was the first time he felt like this power was sweeping everything away. This middle-stage golden core realm cultivator was intimidating. Fortunately, he didn't act foolishly. The consequences would have been unimaginable if they had targeted Jiang Xiao Li in the past few days. On their way, no demon could withstand Jiang Hao's blade. The group walked through the forest, but for some reason, even though they were moving forward, what they saw was no longer the unchanging forest and sky. Zhang Shijiu and the others knew they were now on the right path. Although they didn't understand how Jiang Hao knew the way, it was undoubtedly lucky for them that he did. It seemed like they were really going to be saved. Duan Yu was shocked but didn't speak. Instead, he followed closely. He was afraid of falling behind. The demons that appeared were swiftly killed. No one even paused along the way. They all felt a sense of urgency. After a while, they unconsciously walked out of the forest. Soon, Tnei saw raw Otna people. Each of the 4 individuals faced demons at the same level, and without exception, they were all overbearing and swept through them. At that moment, they realized that everyone who entered this time was exceptional. Shi Jiang and the others were somewhat surprised to see Jiang Hao bring more people over. This senior had actually gone to rescue people. No wonder some said he had exceptionally high attainments in the Bloodwish path. They said the Bloodwish path was fake, but the things others obtained from it were genuine. Was it still considered fake? Junior sister Shi, they'll be following you. I'm going to investigate the source. If it takes too long or if the situation here isn't right, retreat immediately, Jiang Hao said. Remember to observe your surroundings well, keep a safe distance, and avoid entering the forest boundary. Yes, Shi Jiang said. It felt strange. This senior didn't seem to be fooling around. He genuinely intended to venture deeper and truly hoped they could leave safely. He wasn't just pretending. In response, she naturally had to take things seriously as well. Before leaving, Jiang Hao glanced at the spirit beast. The latter patted its chest as though reassuring his master. With that, Jiang Hao quickly departed. He intended to head to the blood pool and meet Jiyu Jin. Hong Yuya hadn't arrived yet, so he could only try seeking help from Jiyu Jin. He knew a lot about things. He couldn't just sit around waiting for the inevitable. He regretted it a bit. If only he hadn't been curious and ventured into the depths of the blood pool to see the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. At least, not this soon. Watching Jiang Hao leave, Shi Jiang and the others couldn't help but feel that he was a strange person. Zheng Shijiao and the others were surprised too. It was a bit dangerous to enter Devil's Den at this time. Xiao Li waved him goodbye. Jiang Hao went straight inside. Their cultivation was too low. They could only stay outside. Fortunately, everyone cherished their lives, and no one followed inside. This was the benefit of the demonic sect. If it were an immortal sect, there might be individuals bursting with a sense of righteousness to save everyone. They would have the "if you can sacrifice yourself, why can't I" attitude. Such people were good at heart, but sometimes, they ended up becoming a hurdle. If he really encountered one, Jiang Hao would knock them out to allow himself the freedom to do what needed to be done. Soon, he prepared himself and opened the path to the blood pool. He traveled quickly along this route. After a while, Jiang Hao saw Ji Yujin again. His eyes were closed, and he looked to be in pain. He waited for a moment before the person finally opened his eyes. "You're here again." Ji Yujin looked at Jiang Hao and smiled. "Because of the changes?" Jiang Hao nodded. "You can't handle it and want to ask me for a solution?" Ji Yujin asked again. Nodded once more. "I don't know the details, but I can sense that the blood pool has been affected by an external force. It has even reached a state where it could lose control." Ji Yujin looked at Jiang Hao. "And the things that can affect the blood pool are no more than a few. First, the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl. Second, the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Third, the Heavenly Extreme Dream Pearl. Fourth, the Ancient Yin-Yang Millstone. Fifth, let's not talk about it. It's probably impossible. So, which one of the first four is it?" "The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl," Jiang Hao said. "The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl," said Jiang Hao. He had never heard of the Heavenly Extreme Dream Pearl or the Ancient Yin-Yang Millstone. As for the fifth, Ji Yujin didn't mention it. He had no idea what it could be. However, he didn't care because he might not encounter these things in his lifetime, so there was no need to worry about them. "The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, eh? That's fortunate. There's a way to deal with it." Ji Yujin sighed in relief. If it were the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl or the Heavenly Extreme Dream Pearl, it would be tough to deal with. Maybe it's nearly unsolvable. Anything can erupt, but the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl simply shouldn't. "But I still haven't found the entrance to seal the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl," Jiang Hao said. "I haven't seen the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, so I don't know the details. You'd better go find a powerful expert. Perhaps they can come up with a solution. I can't leave here, or else it might pass. However, individual strength has limitations. You'll need help," Ji Yujin said seriously. "What kind of help?" Jiang Hao asked. "How would I know? Only by seeing it will we know." Ji Yujin smiled. "However, this assistance definitely won't come without the support of sects like the Clear Sky School. To get their immediate help is a problem. Nevertheless, I can help you deal with the Astronomical Academy." Jiang Hao lowered his head. If he had to ask for help from the immortal sects, could he still make it in time? Nonetheless, he still needed their assistance. "Tell the current dean, he might not even be the dean anymore. But remember his name. Hes called Jing Dajiang," Ji Yujin said. He then mentioned another book. Hearing the book's title, Jiang Hao was momentarily stunned. The book's title didn't seem very significant at first. Mirror Flower World. He had no idea what it was about. "Remember, you must say it. Tell him this book's title," Ji Yujin said. Jiang Hao nodded. "Now, you better find a powerful expert. The influence is significant now, and the entrance should have appeared," Ji Yujin said. Jiang Hao lowered his head in thought. If he used the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl, would he be able to release it? It was too risky. The current Ji Yujin might be good, but who knew what the released Ji Yujin would be like? If his malevolence took over, wouldn't it be even more dangerous? At that point, he might not even have a chance to escape. He couldn't rely on this option alone. In the end, He decided to wait for Hong Yuye. So far, the only person he could trust was her. As he left the blood pool, he smelled a fragrance. It was a familiar scent. He turned around to see a figure in red and white appearing behind him. Jiang Hao sighed in relief. She had finally arrived. Chapter 753. The seal is about to break. Seeing the figure in red and white, Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. With her arrival, things would become much easier. Even if Hong Yuye couldn't do much, things wouldn't be as challenging. There was still some time left before the eruption of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. He could only rely on others this time to get involved. Ji Jin could also be released from his trap to help. He could perhaps even enter the Sea Fog Cave to find the Saint Bandits. Since they could cause so much chaos among the other races, they must still have significant influence. However, all those were options for when there was no other way. And finally, he could try to enter the corpse realm if nothing worked. But the result would be unpredictable. Setting aside his thoughts, Jiang Hao respectfully greeted Hong Yuye. "Greetings, senior." At this moment, Hong Yuye stood under a tree and looked into the depths of the forest. She seemed entirely unaware of Jiang Hao's presence. She didn't even pay attention to his greeting. Her waist-length hair fluttered in the breeze, and her face showed no emotions whatsoever. After a short while, Jiang Hao finally heard her speak. "Do you want to go deeper?" she asked. "I naturally don't have such strength," Jiang Hao said truthfully. "Are you interested in that place, senior?" Hong Yuye turned her gaze toward Jiang Hao and smiled. "Do you want me to help you? When the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl erupts, it will affect your flower too, senior." "I only wish to serve you better," Jiang Hao said as he bowed his head. "What about my September spring?" Hong Yuye asked. "I have it. I bought it already," Jiang Hao said. "You aren't this active when everything is fine," Hong Yuye chuckled. "Senior jests." At that time, the preparations were incomplete, Jiang Hao said. "I'll help you. What are you willing to offer?" Hong Yuye smiled. Jiang Hao bowed respectfully. "I am willing to go through hell and high water for you, senior." He didn't have a choice. Whether Hong Yuye helped him or not, he would anyway go through hell and high water. So, he was only being honest. Hong Yuye looked carefully at the person in front of her and finally stepped deeper into the forest. Jiang Hao quickly followed. As they moved deeper, the distortions became more severe. This was the influence brought about by the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. It was entirely silent here. The place was devoid of any sound or trace of flesh and blood. Jiang Hao felt he couldn't come here alone. Even if he could resist the distortions here, his perception had already been affected. However, as Hong Yuye walked ahead, the influence didn't seem to affect her at all. After a while, a path appeared. The pathway was paved with stones and led to a collapsing gate. The gate led underground. Realized it bore some resemblance to the entrance of the ruin where he had found the heavenly fate misfortune pearl. The gate was open at that moment. Although the surroundings were distorted, it couldn't affect it. "Here it is." Hong Yuye turned back to Jiang Hao. "Are you sure you want to go?" Jiang Hao nodded. For now, at least, he had to go in and assess the situation. However, Hong Yuye might not necessarily follow him inside such an unlucky place. Fortunately, she continued forward, and Jiang Hao felt relieved. Not everyone would care about the eruption of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Someone would come forward for such a major event. There was no need for him to take the risk. If possible, Jiang Hao also wanted to escape because this situation exceeded his abilities by far. After entering the gate, Jiang Hao felt a slight chill but nothing else. There were no distortions or blood remnants. It felt like entering a cold and abandoned underground basement. The stairs continued downward without an end. Jiang Hao walked beside Hong Yuye. He lit a flame to light their way. Their footsteps echoed steadily in the passageway. "Do you know how the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl was sealed?" Hong Yuye suddenly asked. "I don't know," Jiang Hao shook his head. He couldn't possibly know such a thing. "It was sealed using the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl," Hong Yuye said as they walked. "The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl targets flesh and blood, while the heavenly fate misfortune pearl originated from blood itself. Logically, it would have been the best source of nutrients for the earth extreme silent pearl. Unfortunately, it couldn't swallow it and was instead suppressed by it. By using the seal that suppressed the heavenly fate misfortune pearl, it could be used to suppress the earth extreme silent pearl. Later, when the heavenly fate misfortune pearl was taken away, the great luck dissipated, and the situation became precarious. Jiang Hao was astonished. Are you saying that when the heavenly fate misfortune pearl left its seal, it set a precedent for the appearance of the earth extreme silent pearl? Hong Yuye glanced at him. Is that so surprising? Usually, such ominous things would mutually suppress each other. That's how they can be sealed better. Jiang Hao couldn't understand it. Did his entry into the blood pool have little effect after all? He asked her about that. Not exactly. The earth extreme silent pearl is still sealed. It can't become active and needs a lot of time to break the seal. However, your appearance made it activate before its time. Why? Jiang Hao was puzzled. He had only taken a glance. Hong Yuye looked intently at Jiang Hao but didn't say anything. This only made him more curious, but he didn't press her further. As they continued, Jiang Hao saw that the place was indeed similar to where he had found the heavenly fate misfortune pearl. However, it seemed they were heading deeper towards the depths. After a long time, Jiang Hao had walked a considerable distance and landed on a sandy beach littered with bones. In front of the beach, there was an endless sea, and on the sea rested a small boat that seemed to have been there for a long time. Hong Yuye stepped onto the boat, and Jiang Hao followed suit. Then, the boat propelled outward. The seawater was calm, and Jiang Hao felt a bit nervous, but he didn't hesitate. Since entering, all his perceptive abilities had disappeared, and he felt like an ordinary person. The Hong Meng Heart Sutra within his body was operating frantically. The immortal mountain sea shield faintly vibrated. The primordial heavenly blade's intent gradually manifested. The 9 rings trembled slightly. The 9 heavens battle armor seemed to be merging into one. Everything indicated to him that his life was in danger here. After a while, Jiang Hao put down the oar in his hand and looked ahead. Directly ahead was an immensely gigantic star. It made him feel like an ant standing before a colossal elephant. The sense of powerlessness once again overwhelmed his entire body. Around the colossal star stood 4 pillars. The star was leaning towards the left rear pillar. It was seemingly about to push it down. The moment it was toppled might be its moment of freedom. These 4 pillars connected into the high sky, and their light had dimmed. They seemed as though they had nothing left to be able to suppress the earth extreme silent pearl. In about 3 months, the northern pillar will collapse, Hong Yuye said, as she looked at Jiang Hao. You have 3 months left. After 3 months, she didn't continue, but the consequences were self-evident. Jiang Hao lowered his head. 3 months, and he couldn't even use his strength now. How could he seal something like this? Senior, do you have a way? He asked. Since Hong Yuye brought him here, it meant there was still a way. There is a way, Hong Yuye said as she gazed at the 4 pillars. As long as we can restore the power to the 4 pillars and then use the blessing of the mountains, rivers, and great fortune to suppress it, it will work. Chapter 754, Notifying the people in the gathering restore the power of the 4 pillars? And it requires someone with the blessing of mountains, rivers, and great fortune? Jiang Hao felt that this solution was the same as having no solutions at all. It was utterly impossible. Do you think it's impossible? Hong Yuye looked at the man in front of her. She looked calm. Despite being under the influence of the earth extreme silent pearl, she could remain ever so calm. It surprised Jiang Hao. He was afraid deep down. Although he didn't show it, he was far from calm. Senior, can you replenish the power for the 4 pillars? Jiang Hao tentatively asked. Hong Yuye shook her head. Are there any people with great fortune in the present time? Jiang Hao asked again. As far as he knew, there wasn't any. As expected, Hong Yuye shook her head. So, there were no people with great fortune in the present. The only one who had the hope of becoming someone like that was Chu Jie, and she was still growing and learning. What should I do? Senior? Jiang Hao asked humbly. Hong Yuye sat down. Make some tea. Knew he had to use the September spring tea. Without hesitation, He started brewing the tea. It eased his nervousness a bit. When he tasted the September spring, a kind of spirited aura flowed into his body and made him feel much more relaxed than before. He hadn't expected September spring to have such an effect. The 4 pillars connect to the stars of the high sky. It's impossible to fully replenish their power, but it's quite easy to temporarily add some strength to them, Hong Yuye said. How do we do that? Jiang Hao asked. Seek the immortal sects, Hong Yuye said as she held the teacup. They would all know about the 4 pillars, but they don't know what consequences might arise if they take action recklessly. Upsetting the balance could lead to breaking the seal completely. The 4 major immortal sects. Jiang Hao frowned. But how can we make them take action? They were too far apart. It was impossible to contact all of them. Even if it were possible, he wouldn't be able to make them believe him. Perhaps the Astronomical Academy might have a way, but what about the other 3 major immortal sects? Hong Yuye didn't answer the question. So far, the only power he could ask for was from those in the gathering. There was Zhong from the west and Xing from the east. Maybe he could leverage their help. However, there was no one from the north, and he couldn't contact the Clear Sky School. Hong Yuye's silence meant that this had to be dealt with by himself. It seemed he could only ask about the situation at the gathering. They would probably find a way. But he needed to carefully consider the way he was going to inform them. Otherwise, it could lead to more problems. Jiang Hao asked about dealing with the pillars. Hong Yuye glanced at him but didn't say anything. It seemed unnecessary since the major sects should be aware of it already. And what about replacing the Great Fortune Bearer? Jiang Hao asked. That was crucial. While the 4 pillars could temporarily exert power, could a temporary Great Fortune Bearer emerge in that time? Obviously not. Great Fortune. Hong Yuye looked at Jiang Hao in silence. Why do you look at me like that, Senior? Jiang Hao felt a bit uneasy. Hong Yuye drank a sip of tea. Try using the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl. Maybe it could help. Jiang Hao lowered his head in puzzlement. Although the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl represented misfortune, great fortune didn't necessarily represent all luck. A great fortune bearer was more like the trend of an era who possessed great power. For instance, the former human emperor was a significant figure of an era. Even his sword carried the essence of that era. The Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl indeed represented an era, but it just didn't seem right. Since Hong Yuye said it could work, then it might just do. What happens after? Jiang Hao asked. After? Hong Yuye smiled. That's up to you. Me? Jiang Hao furrowed his brow. How would you seal the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl? Hong Yuye asked. Jiang Hao was stunned. He looked at the person in front of him incredulously. He understood what she meant. But, back then, he didn't know how terrifying the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl was. Otherwise, he would never have taken it away. Now that he knew the horror of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, he felt a bit reluctant. After a moment of silence, he sighed. He didn't have a choice. If he could succeed, it would be a good outcome for everyone. If he failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Hong Yuye didn't speak again but continued drinking her tea. Jiang Hao also remained silent. He already had an answer in his heart. He looked up at the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. It was as big as a star. He knew how difficult it would be to solve this problem. But since he had made up his mind, he stopped thinking about it. There was no more hesitation. He took out the stone tablet. After rehearsing what to say in his mind, he entered the gathering. He stepped right into the public area. At that moment, there were 2 women inside. One was Gui and the other was Zhong. They had been talking. When they saw someone enter, they immediately turned to look. Seeing that it was Jing, Gui exclaimed, "This is rare. Besides the first time you came, Jing has never entered here before." Zhong didn't care for it, but her impression of Jing seemed to become even more mysterious. In the gathering, he held an important position. "There's something I'd like to ask you," Jiang Hao said politely to Gui. "What is it?" Gui was puzzled. How can we get Senior Dan Yuan to start the gathering? Jiang Hao asked. He had come here to ask that. There was no time to waste. That isn't very difficult. When do you want it to happen? It's better to have a very important reason for it, said Gui with a smile. Now, Jiang Hao said. Now. Gui was a bit surprised. Yes. Now. Jiang Hao nodded. But what exactly is this about? Gui asked. Jiang Hao didn't hide anything and said, the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl might break its seal soon. Maybe in 1 to 3 months. Whoosh. Gui stood upright instantly. She immediately contacted Senior Dan Yuan. 3 months. She didn't even have time to escape from the south. This was all too sudden. Zhong was also shocked. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl was about to break the seal. It felt surreal. After a while, the gathering began. Seeing that everyone was present, Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. It was a temporary gathering, but if only a few people were present, that would have been difficult. He had to rely on the people in the gathering. Senior Dan Yuan sat at the top and said, this is a temporary gathering regarding the breaking of the seal of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Hearing this, Xing said, is there a problem with the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl? I was just about to inform you all. It seems that the Bright Moon sect has attempted to pry into it and concluded that the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl and the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl will erupt together. The major immortal sects are acting in secret. Gui was dumbfounded. It was not necessary to escape. Do you have accurate information, Jing? Senior Dan Yuan asked softly. Everyone looked at Jing and waited for his response. At that moment, Jiang Hao's deep voice resonated in space. I entered the sealed place. Within 3 months, the seal will break. Chapter 755. Seeking help. Upon hearing Jing's words, everyone was stunned. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl would be unsealed within 3 months. It was unbelievable. Was it too sudden? 3 months might not seem that short, but in the cultivation world, it was merely the blink of an eye. What could be done in 3 months? Trying to escape from the south was barely feasible within 3 months. Within 3 months, it will erupt. Zhong still couldn't process it. Jiang Hao nodded. Friend Jing, have you been inside there? Senior Dan Yuan inquired. Yes. Jiang Hao nodded. He didn't rush to say anything else. He needed to carefully consider his words. However, what surprised him was Senior Dan Yuan's next words. The seal involves the 4 directional pillars. Senior, you are indeed knowledgeable in this matter, said Jiang Hao in admiration. It seems indeed that the 4 pillars are about to collapse, Senior Dan Yuan said with a furrowed brow. Do you have a way to balance the 4 pillars, friend Jing? Jiang Hao lowered his head. He remained silent for a long time. It's worth a try. At this moment, Jiang Hao wasn't aware of how difficult it would be to balance them. But from Senior Dan Yuan's tone, if a balance were achieved, the 4 major sects would intervene. The matter of convincing the 4 major sects was another matter entirely. He couldn't do it alone, but Senior Dan Yuan might be able to help. Moreover, with Senior Dan Yuan's involvement, the others might believe him more readily. The others didn't seem to have any doubts in their minds. All right, try it. The task now is to replenish the power for the 4 pillars, Senior Dan Yuan said. How do we replenish the power? Gui asked. Everyone looked at Senior Dan Yuan. The matter was not easy at all, but there was hope for a favorable outcome. We need the assistance of the 4 major sects. They should know the corresponding locations of the pillars. Senior Dan Yuan looked at everyone. Right now, we need to seek help from the 4 major sects to create an opportunity for Jing to act. How can we make the sects believe and take action? Gui asked. If they believe it, they will act. The key lies in whether they'll believe us or not. If the information is false, their actions might directly trigger the eruption of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, Senior Dan Yuan said earnestly. Several people sighed. How could they convince the sects in this way? But without convincing them, they only had 3 months. Missing this opportunity would be disastrous. Jiang Hao remained silent. At this moment, he didn't speak. Simply waiting for the changes to unfold was enough. His words wouldn't do anything to help them believe or motivate them to act. Previously, he had even considered how to make these people believe him. But now, this wasn't something he needed to worry about, as Senior Dan Yuan had gotten involved. Using Senior Dan Yuan's reputation was undoubtedly the most convincing approach. Fortunately, Senior Dan Yuan knew enough, otherwise, it would have been quite troublesome. I can try, Xing said. I can try to communicate with the Bright Moon sect. There's a fair chance they might believe me. After all, they've already noticed the issue. They just don't know the details. If the Bright Moon sect believes it, then the Clear Sky School would be fine with it too. Communication with the West and North might be problematic. Even if communication is established eventually, it will take a long time to convince them. As for the West, Senior Dan Yuan looked at Zhong. I'm not confident that it'll work. Zhong shook her head. The matter was too difficult. I can go to find the Grand Master of the Heavenly Tower. Perhaps he can speak to the Academy. However, the distance is still a problem. Even if we can communicate, the other side needs to consider, Liu said. The Academy? Jiang Hao, who had been silent, suddenly asked. The others looked at him. Doesn't the Academy have a senior named Jing Dajiang? He looked at Zhong. Jing Dajiang? Zhong was taken aback. She then nodded. He was the former dean. If you can meet him and tell him the name of a book, there shouldn't be a problem, Jiang Hao said. He then mentioned the book title, Mirror Flower World. Zhong was somewhat hesitant but ultimately nodded because there was no other choice. Lastly, the North was left. But there was no one in the North. My people happen to be in the North, so I'll handle that, Senior Dan Yuan said with a smile. What should I do? Gui asked. Avatar next. Chapter 756, Trust Unconditionally. The pathways of the Academy were lined with bamboo. Walking upon them felt like strolling through the mountain trails. Yang Yuezhi appeared calm on the outside, but she was anxious. The back courtyard was where the old gentleman lived. Ordinary disciples, apart from their duties, were not permitted to enter. To gain entry, one needed to follow very specific rules. Otherwise, they could get ensnared in an illusion. They would need the knowledge to secure their escape route. The process was extremely arduous, and failure would lead to punishment. In short, within the Academy, there was no necessity for anyone to step into the backyard. After a while, Yang Yuezhi finally reached the front of an ancient-looking door. The door led to the backyard. She took a deep breath and bowed. I, disciple Yang Yuezhi, seek an audience with Master Jing. The wind blew gently. There was no response. Yang Yuezhi bowed and waited for someone to speak. She hoped to avoid the test that way. However, half an hour passed, and still, no one uttered a word. Helpless, she had no choice but to step inside, which was unlike her. Despite being a decent student within the Academy, she wasn't prominent like the other senior disciples who were respected and admired. She always kept to herself and adhered to the rules while remaining unnoticed by others. When her wait yielded no results, she had to enter. Failure would draw attention to her. She was a quiet person and didn't want that kind of attention. She had to try. In truth, she didn't have high hopes for that book. Could one book really move a senior of the Academy? No matter how she thought about it, it seemed impossible. Nevertheless, she had to try. Perhaps Jing from the gathering wasn't trustworthy, but Senior Dan Yuan surely wouldn't deceive her. Sighing, Yang Yuezhi stepped forward. It seemed that attracting the attention of the gentleman in the backyard wasn't as easy as she had anticipated, even for a student like her. As she entered the backyard, the path beneath her feet changed. Two paths appeared before her. One led to an endless abyss, and the other led to the shore. Without much thought, Yang Yuezhi walked toward the abyss. A path filled with goodwill wouldn't be a trial. Only through the abyss was there a chance to proceed. Her steps were resolute and unwavering, without the slightest hesitation. Her arrival attracted the attention of the people inside. A middle-aged man sat under a tree and enjoyed the cool breeze. Next to him were two grizzled old men. I heard that something big happened. The people are busy and frantic. I wonder if they've thought of a solution, said an old man with white hair. Who cares? We're all retired. Let's enjoy ourselves. If things get worse, then so be it, said the middle-aged man indifferently. Yeah. Let's see what this little girl can do. She's quite interesting, but she is reserved, said another bearded old man. Do you think she can come over here? The middle-aged man asked. I don't know, but she's here to see you. Do you think she's got something on her mind? The white-haired old man asked. The middle-aged man shrugged. How would I know? It's been many years since someone came to see me. Why would someone suddenly show up? He was Jing Dajiang. The three observed Yang Yuezhi approaching the abyss. As she was about to enter the abyss, all three paid close attention. Any hint of hesitation would lead to failure. With one step, the outcome was sealed. The illusion vanished, and Yang Yuezhi appeared under the tree before Jing Dajiang and the other two. The three couldn't help but applaud. Well done, young lady. At this moment, Yang Yuezhi also breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at the three respectfully. I wish to see Master Jing. That's me. What do you want with me? Jing Dajiang asked. He was also somewhat curious about why this young girl had come here. I wish for you to restore one of the 4 pillars, Master Jing, Yang Yuezhi said. Jing Dajiang furrowed his brows. Do you know what the 4 pillars you speak of are? Yes. Yang Yuezhi nodded respectfully. Oh. Jing Dajiang chuckled. Since you know, do you also understand the importance of this matter? I do. And the consequences? Naturally. Can I trust you, then? Not just you. Even if heads of other sects came here, I can't trust them unconditionally. Yang Yuezhi was aware of this. Such matters were of exceptional importance. But she had no choice. After a moment of silence, she decided to do as Jing had instructed her to do. I know that common reasons won't make you agree with me, so I don't plan to argue about it. So, what do you plan to do? Jing Dajiang asked. Yang Yuezhi took a deep breath and said, There is a senior who told me to pass on the title of a book to you. It was the first time Yang Yuezhi had encountered something so peculiar. She felt like she was a joke as she relayed such an absurd message. Nevertheless, Jing Dajiang's face suddenly turned serious. What title? He asked. Mirror Flower World, Yang Yuezhi said. She could only wait for the results now. She had thought that the other party might show disdain. However, the reality was different from her expectations. Jing Dajiang stood up abruptly and looked at Yang Yuezhi incredulously. After a long while, he finally said, Are you saying you need me to restore power to one of the 4 pillars right now? Yang Yuezhi was stunned. She looked at the man before her in surprise. She dared not think too much and simply nodded in response. Yes. Jing Dajiang didn't ask anything else. He glanced at the 2 old men. Let's go. We need to mobilize the power of the academy and empower the 4 pillars. Before leaving, he glanced at Yang Yuezhi one last time. Throughout the entire process, they didn't ask even a single question. Yang Yuezhi was shocked. Could a mere title of a book hold such power and influence? At the Bright Moon sect, Shu Bai walked calmly along the road. After a while, he arrived at the star platform. The Ancient One was still there. Master, we meet again. Shu Bai leaped onto the star platform. Why have you come back? The Ancient One's face darkened. I've come to ask you for something, Shu Bai said with a smile. The Ancient One glanced at him coldly. It was you who came with the news last time. What do you have this time? Master, you're as quick and straightforward as ever. This time, I am here with another significant news. It's about restoring power to the 4 pillars, said Shu Bai and smiled. He didn't beat around the bush and directly stated his purpose. Replenishing the pillars? Don't you know it's impossible to continuously replenish the 4 pillars? Even if done temporarily, it might erupt if the balance between them is interrupted. That would be catastrophic, said the Ancient One icily. Understood. Shu Bai nodded. I've also received information that within 3 months, the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl will erupt. At this, the Ancient One's eyes narrowed. After a moment of silence, he asked, Are you absolutely sure? Master, you can calculate and verify. Shu Bai smiled. The Ancient One sighed wearily. At any other time, he might have had doubts. But Shu Bai had informed him of his discoveries before, and it turned out that he was quite well informed. However, he couldn't figure out how to temporarily suppress such a thing. Chapter 757, Ending Silently. 1. Shu Bai stood below the mountain peak and gazed upward at the elders who were in a conference. If he could convince the Ancient One, the issue wouldn't escalate. The next step would be to inform the head of the Clear Sky School. Both the sects got along well together, but the northern region and western region always had different motivations. If something were to happen, they'd bear the brunt. B0X. The Clear Sky School and the Bright Moon sect had significant influence and status. Even if something happened, it would give them enough time to react. However, the Mountain Sea Sword sect and the Astronomical Academy were closer to the south and would certainly be reluctant to get involved. The Bright Moon sect's proposition was akin to putting their entire family fortune up to a gamble. If they won, everyone would be happy. But if they lost, then someone would have to sacrifice themselves to buy some time for others. However, it would give them enough time to think of something. If their defense was good, the pressure would be less. For now, Shu Bai could only guarantee some sort of cooperation between the Clear Sky School and the Bright Moon sect. It would take no less than 3 months to settle matters with the other sects. A vague claim wouldn't make others willing to put everything at stake. That would be unrealistic to expect. He didn't know how the North and West would react. However, if they were to act, they would surely send communication. If that happened, they would be facing it together. Atop the star platform, the Ancient One and others discussed for a long time. They were unsure how to approach the other immortal sects. The Clear Sky School might be fine with it, but the North and West will surely hesitate. If they refuse, we'll be in a do-or-die situation, someone said. But what if someone can actually balance the 4 pillars? Asked the Ancient One. Do you have anything that can prove that? The Ancient One was speechless. There was no evidence to prove anything. There was simply no way to know whether the eruption would actually happen in the next 3 months. They weren't entirely convinced themselves, so persuading the other sects was even more difficult, especially those sects that were already dealing with their own crises. Let's at least initiate communication and see what happens, someone said. After activating an artifact, everyone waited. After a short while, an elder emerged with a peculiar look on his face. How did it go? Asked the Ancient One. The elder lowered their head. The North and the West agreed. Everyone was speechless. At that moment, a middle-aged man said, "All right. Now that a consensus is reached, let's clear out the unnecessary things to avoid any confusion later." At the Black Heaven sect, Baizhu arrived at the Sun and Moon Peak. Shenyuan Tai was in the trial area. Shenyuan he guarded the place. If it were someone else, she wouldn't have let them in, but Baizhu was an exception. They wouldn't have succeeded if it hadn't been for her. It wouldn't be fair to prevent her from entering the place. Baizhu sighed and tapped the stone covering. "Senior brother Shenyuan? Are you there?" There was no response from inside. Shenyuan he was at a loss. "I'll get straight to the point," Baizhu said solemnly. "We're in a do-or-die situation in the south, and we might need the Shenyuan sword's help. Please, could you ask for its help in the matter?" Baizhu didn't want to die. She was still young, with endless potential. Someone like her couldn't be at the front line, and yet, here she was. Fate had played its hand. There was no escape. All she could do was face it and seek help from the Grand Earth Emperor. She could only hope that he would assist, and she would have a chance at survival. She had no intention of leaving. This place was probably the only place where the influence of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl could be withstood. It wasn't because strong individuals resided in the south, but because the Shenyuan sword that was once wielded by the human emperor was here. Perhaps it could protect a small area in the south. If the 4 great immortal sects could hold out long enough, she might still have a chance at survival. Shenyuan he felt puzzled but remained silent. Jiang Hao stood on the boat and waited quietly. He occasionally checked the stone tablet, but there was no exchange within it. He wasn't sure how things were going. The 4 great immortal sects wouldn't notify him if they chose to intervene. This time, the impact of the inevitable was vast, and he had limited options for escape. If Hong Yuye didn't act and the 4 great sects hesitated, his life would be at great risk. Weakness was one thing, but he seemed to have become arrogant recently. He foolishly thought that reaching the late stage of the return to Void Realm meant that nothing could affect him. Gradually, he started believing that he would be able to deal with any danger that came his way. That had led to the current crisis. If I survive this time, I'll need to be more cautious. Meanwhile, Hong Yuye sipped her tea and observed the ever-increasing size of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. 3 days later, Jiang Hao heard a rumble. In the sky, the 4 major constellations sparkled, and an immense power descended from the heavens. Jiang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. It had begun. Meanwhile, in the south, many of those in the shadows also detected an unusual aura. People from the Great Thousand God sect noticed it too. They retreated and avoided involving themselves in the matters of the south. Although many didn't understand what was happening, they all began to withdraw. Even Feng Hua retreated discreetly. On the other side, the end of all things became even more bold. They previously hid in the shadows, but now, they entered the city and performed blood sacrifices in the open. They aimed to support the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. At the moment they were about to succeed, thunder surged from the sky. Boom! Countless members of the end of all things vanished. A figure descended from the sky. Their gaze lowered upon the individuals below, and flames ignited around them. No grass grew where they stepped. Everything was incinerated. In an instant, all the members of the end of all things turned to ashes. This is so troublesome. I still have to visit a few more places. The end of all things always likes to play these petty games. They should have stopped when they had the chance. Thief becomes so brazen. The figure arrived from the sky and disappeared into thin air. At the Black Heaven sect, Baizhu waited. She wasn't waiting for the Shenyuan sword to take action but for the outcome. Chapter 758, Ending Silently, 2. Whether it was a failure or a success, she needed to know before she decided to leave. However, at that moment, a sword intent soared into the sky. It then disappeared without a trace. Baizhu was somewhat surprised. She hadn't expected the Shenyuan sword to make a move. As various changes emerged, Zheng Shijiu and his team found the number of demons dwindling. B0x. It's not the demons that are retreating. It's the forest itself. Shijiang was shocked. The forest had expanded rapidly just a while ago, but it had stopped and was now receding. That could only mean that there was some major change happening within. The only person who had entered the forest was senior brother Jiang Hao. Was it really him? It wasn't just her. Everyone else was in disbelief. The danger here was apparent, yet he had charged straight into the depths. This left them puzzled. Perhaps someone like that wasn't quite suitable to be in a demonic sect. Above the vast sea, Jiang Hao saw a large platform emerging from the water. It appeared after the 4 pillars were charged. A red essence attached to the pillars and balanced them. So, this is how they balance the power of the pillars. Jiang Hao sighed and leaped onto the platform. At that moment, he held the immortal mountain sea shield in his left hand and grasped the primordial heavenly blade in his right. The golden ring hovered around him, and the 9 heavens battle armor seemed to merge together. A purple aura enveloped him. All the powers were resisting the pressure from the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Jiang Hao stood on the platform and stared at the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. He raised his shield and took out the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl. He didn't know exactly how to use it, but the moment the pearl appeared, he could feel the seal becoming stronger. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl was now rapidly shrinking. Jiang Hao stood on the platform and saw everything. He had brought out all his divine items. He hoped they would protect him while he tried to suppress the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. He was also prepared to flee. If nothing worked, he would escape to the corpse realm. High above in the heavens, the power of the stars descended, and a sword intent also hovered in the sky. An aura pressed down on everything. It was the Shenyuan sword that carried the aura of the Grand Earth Emperor. Shenyuan Tai provided assistance via the sword as well. At that moment, the power of the seal erupted and suppressed the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. As Jiang Hao waited as the power of the seal became stronger, the pearl went from the size of a star to that of a mountain peak and gradually shrunk to the size of a stone. At that point, Jiang Hao had lost track of how long he had been waiting. Had it been 3 days or 10? His gaze remained fixated on the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl as he waited for the perfect opportunity. As time passed, Jiang Hao's eyes were fixed only on the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. At some point, the pearl had shrunk to the size of a small bead that could fit into his palm. Yet, he waited. It wasn't enough. His intervention now would not affect it. He couldn't seal something that was already so powerful. He could only seal something that was already sealed enough. This had been true for both the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl and the 9 Nether. All he could do was wait. After a long time, the 4 supporting pillars seemed to weaken. They showed signs of collapse. The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl shrunk to the ultimate size. At that point, his power moved. His divine ability, the reappearance of the hidden spirit, appeared. He swallowed pills that enhanced his cultivation and herbs that replenished his spiritual energy. He activated the mountain sea seal and the universe in a palm. In an instant, the purple aura surged toward the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. This was his only chance. If he failed, everything would be finished. At the Astronomical Academy, Jing Dajiang and others mobilized the Academy's power to support the 4 pillars. However, after half a month, their power was almost depleted. Although there were people on the opposite side balancing the power, their resources were limited. At most, it would hold for half a day. They would stop when their strength was exhausted, and then the great eruption would be inevitable. Half a month passed. Although they had made many preparations, the outcome was unpredictable. "Elder, why do you blindly believe the people on the other side?" someone asked. Jing Dajiang sneered. "How could I trust them? I trust someone else." "What about the title of the book?" the white-haired elder asked. "It's not just a book title. It's a code. Behind that code is someone we can't refuse." Jing Dajiang sighed. "Since this code has appeared, it means that we can trust the person behind it." The crowd was puzzled. But Jing Dajiang didn't say much. He just hoped for a change. At the Bright Moon sect, the forces mobilized by the Ancient One and others were also depleting, and the suppression had reached its limit. It wouldn't be long before the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl would erupt. So, he didn't understand the use of this temporary relief. Around him, endless stars were spinning, but there were no signs of any change. They could only wait till the final moment. After a long time, he felt like this was the end, but nothing happened. Just as the power began to deplete, the Ancient One suddenly saw a flash of purple light rushing into the stars. This purple light was hard to capture, and it quickly dissipated. Along with it dissipated the power of the 4 pillars. They were already struggling to hold on. However, there was no eruption. "Is it him? The purple aura that had helped the Bright Moon sect before?" Shu Bai looked up from the foot of the mountain. He knew that discussions were going on, and efforts were being made. Half a month had passed. The power of the stars had been activated and was now gone. It seems to have succeeded. If it failed, something would have happened. It wouldn't have been so quiet. He breathed a sigh of relief. In times of great change, no sect benefited. Maintaining the status quo might not be the best, but it was what most people hoped for. With a light chuckle, he turned and left. "Good morning, Senior Brother Shu," said a junior as she greeted him respectfully. She was rushing with some spirit herbs in her hands. Shu Bai nodded and watched her leave. Many things had come to pass. Everything seemed quiet and peaceful now, but they had averted a huge crisis just moments ago. This was what he knew now. Perhaps there had been other calamities that had been handled just as quietly that he didn't know about. In Devil's Den, the forest had completely vanished. This surprised Zheng Shoujiu and the others. The forest that had made them feel so powerless was gone. There was only one person who had dared to go in. Was this all thanks to senior brother Jiang Hao? A few of them found it hard to believe. How could that be possible? They were perplexed as Jiang Hao appeared in front of them. He looked somewhat pale. Xiao Li was the first to rush to him. Senior brother Jiang, are you all right? I'm fine, said Jiang Hao. He had just appeared from inside the forest. The seal had been successful, and the whole place was about to be sealed, so he had to come out. He was seriously injured. He needed to return to his house quickly. Hong Yuye had left for some unknown reason. By the time he had regained his senses, she was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps he had been safe because of her. Let's leave from here. There seems to be a shadow in the depths. Maybe something else is inside, Jiang Hao said. He couldn't take credit for the achievements here. The Heavenly Note sect didn't know the seriousness of the situation. So, the achievement, even if it was credited to him, wouldn't be too unbelievable. Everyone wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, so no one objected. They headed out immediately. Jiang Hao didn't linger there. He returned to his residence and began to heal himself. Many days later, around early July, Jiang Hao finally opened his eyes. Fortunately, he had various divine abilities on him. Otherwise, his recovery wouldn't have been so easy. At that moment, he took out a purple bead from his storage treasure. There was a small, green pearl inside the bead. It was the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. It had almost killed him. He now had both the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl and the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl. For 1 Ada M Tneen Rucha, Tnee's 2 pearls would kill millimeter. Raw now, all any cooler do was continue to seal them. He also needed to understand the things connected to this pearl. Everything had happened too quickly for him to take the time to appraise the pearl. Only now he found the time to appraise it after everything was sorted. Chapter 759, Junior Brother, do you want to take your name down from the Law Enforcement Hall's suspect list? Jiang Hao sat cross-legged in his place of cultivation and thought about the incident, which had mostly depended on luck. Everything had happened so quickly that he had tried to find a temporary and immediate solution. The ones who could help had fortunately appeared at the last minute. If there had been no stone tablet, things would have been catastrophic. Fortunately, he had met Ji Yu Jin. Otherwise, the West would have delayed in providing help. Every aspect had depended on luck. To him, it felt like he had been very fortunate that things had worked out. B0X. During the sealing process, he dared not be distracted and was uncertain if his effort might be in vain. Everything just exceeded his limits. If he hadn't forced himself, he couldn't help but shake his head. It was best not to dwell on it. When he was sealing the pearl, it felt as though all the energy and spirit in his body had been sucked dry. Moreover, the 4 pillars collapsed and were engulfed by the seawater. It was uncertain whether they could be used again. He had no idea how the outside world was reacting to this. He could only wait for the next gathering to find out. For now, he needed to focus on his own condition. He needed to understand the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl in his hand. He used his daily appraisal ability. Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, sealed by the universe in a palm. In ancient times, someone traveled across the land and visited myriad races. They sought the creatures of heaven and earth and collected a drop of blood from countless beings, regardless of strength. After countless years, the collective blood and flesh coalesced. Under the influence of time and careful preparation, the well-preserved blood and flesh began to merge and started absorbing the surrounding blood and flesh. The converged point experienced wars among creatures and absorbed endless blood and flesh. It transformed within the heavens and the earth, and now, it's complete. When sealed, it can subdue the physical body without fear of aura suppression. 7 days later, the seal will be broken. If it's not sealed again, it will distort space and absorb the blood and flesh of all living beings. The earth will return to silence. Jiang Hao quickly reinforced the seal within the universe in a palm. Once the pearl erupted, he would be crushed within a breath. However, there was still a possibility of escape. The Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl was already terrifying enough. Among the 2 pearls, the heavenly fate misfortune pearl still posed a greater threat. After sealing it, Jiang Hao put the pearl aside and then took out the fragment of the earth extreme heart-devouring pearl. This time, there was no reaction between the two. Moreover, the appraisal result indicated that the earth extreme silent pearl was now complete. It might mean that it had become independent of the earth extreme heart-devouring pearl. Next, Jiang Hao took out the heavenly fate misfortune pearl and the 9 nether. The 9 nether seemed scared when placed between the two pearls. It was already slow-witted, but now, it might have entirely given up on using its brain. After showing the 9 nether its new neighbors, Jiang Hao put away the items. Once the gathering began, they would discuss the fate of the earth extreme silent pearl. If those people were interested, he could give it away. If the earth extreme silent pearl erupted elsewhere, he would have time to plan his escape while the other sects attempted to seal it. If it erupted where he was, it would be a matter of life and death. The heavenly fate misfortune pearl couldn't be handed over because if it erupted, he would definitely die. Sighing, Jiang Hao walked to the courtyard and looked at the peach tree. His mind was not at peace. He needed to find a way to calm himself so he could continue his daily life. The changes in the earth extreme silent pearl had affected Devil's Den, but no one knew the exact situation. The Heavenly Note sect would also be busy with their own affairs as usual. At most, someone would come and find him to ask about it. He had already prepared an excuse to distance himself from it. At night, the spirit beast returned with a few fruits for Jiang Hao. "Master, have you come out of seclusion? Xiao Li asked me to bring these over." Jiang Hao accepted them. They were white. He took a bite. They tasted bitter. "Could these even be eaten?" "You have them." He gave the fruits to the spirit beast. He hoped the spirit beast could eat them. Nothing seemed to make it suffer. At that moment, he glanced at his interface. He wanted to know how long it would take him to advance further. It had been a long time since he last paid attention to it. Name, Jiang Hao, age, 35, cultivation level, late stage of the return to Void Realm, cultivation method, Heavenly Sound 100 revolutions, Hongmeng Heart Sutra, divine ability, 9 revolutions death substitution, unique, daily appraisal clear and pure heart, reappearance of hidden spirit, divine might, revival of withered tree, heavenly cauldron, indestructible Vaja, lifeblood, 48-100, can be cultivated, cultivation, 46-100, can be cultivated, divine abilities, 1/3, cannot be obtained. Golden legend, 1/2, cannot be obtained, 48, halfway there, Jiang Hao thought about it for a moment. From October last year until now, almost a year had passed, and he was only halfway through. Candlelight Pill Pavilion soon. It was almost time to receive the high-grade spirit herbs. Even if it meant a loss, he had to continue. The next day, Jiang Hao began his daily routine and waited for the stone tablet to notify him about the gathering. However, half a month passed without any messages. He did receive a visit from Liu Xingchen. It had been a long time since he had appraised Liu Xingchen. He didn't know his condition now. Jiang Hao appraised him. Liu Xingchen, true disciple of the heavenly faction. Born with the aura of the true dragon. An undercover agent for the Heavenly Note sect's law enforcement hall. The seed of evil bloomed in his body, and it now nourishes the 3 remnant souls. When his original essence is stronger than the evil influence, he can suppress them easily. Due to recent events, he bit off half of those 3 remnants to observe the changes better. Presently, his cultivation is nearing the late stage of the soul ascension realm but with severe side effects. He needs time for everything to settle before completing a smooth advancement. He came to find you because, apparently, you've done something astonishing yet again. The seed of evil blooming within him. Jiang Hao was surprised. This was something he hadn't anticipated. However, it seemed that everything was under his control. As long as he could suppress it, there would be no problem. If he couldn't, he would be controlled by those remnants. It wasn't clear if Liu Xingchen had intentionally allowed himself to be possessed before. However, it was clear that Liu Xingchen had absolute control since he had bitten off half of the 3 remnant souls. The last line surprised him. What had he done this time? Good morning, junior brother Jiang, said Liu Xingchen with a smile. Jiang Hao politely said, Good morning to you too, senior brother Liu. Junior brother Jiang, are you planning to clear your name from the list in the law enforcement hall? Asked Liu Xingchen. Jiang Hao looked puzzled. Why do you ask that, senior brother? No one in the entire sect needed to be on that list more than him. The list was what saved his life. Previously, when his cultivation had reached the late stage of the return to Void Realm, he had been confident. However, he now understood that there were even stronger people than himself. It was unnecessary to take risks. He didn't want to venture outside. If it involved something important, he would withdraw immediately and not get involved in anything. Liu Xingchen seemed to be enjoying the show. Right now, the Law Enforcement Hall and the Merit Hall are at odds. They think your merits are high, so your name shouldn't be hanging in the suspect list. Jiang Hao was speechless. Chapter 760. Giving 9 nether away to stay or not on the suspect list was indisputable. He had always been in danger since he reached the Foundation establishment realm. The most significant threat had been from the Pavilion Master of the Heavenly Joy Pavilion. Now that the Pavilion Master had clarified that he wouldn't act against Jiang Hao, he should be out of immediate danger. However, this is just one side of the story. B0X. He didn't know if someone powerful would give in to temptation and come after him. How many times would a person restrain themselves? Once. Twice. If someone had the intention and the means to kill him, they might do it without a second thought. He needed to avoid that at all costs. He needed to be on his guard against the Pavilion Master. Once his name was removed from the suspect list, it would be like an invitation to others. They could act whenever they wanted. He couldn't just rely on the assumption that they might not come after him. If he did that, he was uncertain how long he would be able to survive. It was better to live in peace while tending to the spirit herb garden. Besides, being on the suspect list didn't really restrict him in any way. If he was willing, there were always missions available that would allow him to venture out of the sect. He only needed to pay some spirit stones. Others couldn't force him to go out. How could he give up such an advantage? Even if he became a true disciple, the title wouldn't protect him as much. Reaching the return to Void Realm wasn't much. It wasn't enough to make him feel completely safe. Jiang Hao was puzzled. Why do they suddenly want to remove me from the suspect list? Do you not remember what you did? Asked Liu Xingchen. The problem in Devil's Den has troubled many people in the sect, but you went in once and solved it. Can the sect ignore such an achievement? Not just the merits, you would also get a lot of spirit stones for it. Spirit stones? Jiang Hao hadn't reported to the Law Enforcement Hall for any missions yet. So, he thought he would, at most, get 1 or 2,000 spirit stones. That was probably how much a golden core realm cultivator would be offered. However, Liu Xingchen's words implied that it might be much more than that. He would go and check it out later. I only walked into Devil's Den. I didn't do anything much, said Jiang Hao. That cannot be verified, so it will fall on your head. Junior brother Jiang, your achievements are rising again, said Liu Xingchen as he looked at him. Within the Law Enforcement Hall, there is a serious disagreement because of you. Some people from the Law Enforcement Hall want to observe you more, so they want to keep you on the suspect list. They think you are too suspicious. No one had ever had so many encounters with spies and traitors like you. Meanwhile, the people from the Merit Hall think that your achievements are exemplary and such a person shouldn't be suspected. The Task Hall didn't say anything at first, but later, they supported the Law Enforcement Hall. Jiang Hao was speechless. Sometimes, the Task Hall did things that benefited him indirectly. Will there be a solution to the issue? He asked. It's hard to say. Liu Xingchen shook his head. At this time, you better lie low. Otherwise, it'll be quite troublesome. Jiang Hao did want to do something, but there weren't any spies in the sect lately whom he could use. It was indeed not a good thing to have high achievements while also being suspected as a spy. But how could he come up with a way to stay on the suspect list? The ones on the list could only fulfill missions within the sect, but there were always more missions to do outside. Junior brother Jiang, Are you curious why the people from the Merit Hall are so determined to remove you from the list? Liu Xingchen suddenly asked. They feel embarrassed that someone with such high achievements is being observed like a suspect, and that might damage their reputation. Jiang Hao said tentatively. That's one reason, but many people think there is no problem with you. The task hall also knows this, but they want you to take their missions. Do you think these people are naive? In the past, you made it into the suspect list because of me. But now, you're there because someone wants you to remain there. Similarly, some people want you off that list. Ultimately, they are focused on your achievements, or they are curious about how you obtained so many achievements, said Liu Xingchen with narrowed eyes. In such a large sect, do you think everyone has the same intentions? The law enforcement hall has strict discipline, but beyond that, do you know who they actually are? Jiang Hao lowered his head and felt pressured. He was pretty famous in the law enforcement hall. The Merit Hall and the Task Hall both knew his name as well. Among these people, who knew which ones were acting with hidden agendas? This didn't only happen in demonic sects but also in immortal sects. Perhaps most people were already keeping a close eye on him. They had motives and would do anything to fulfill their purpose. Jiang Hao sighed. Although he maintained a low profile, he was very noticeable, especially among the people of the law enforcement hall. He needed to become stronger as soon as possible and lie low. He decided not to make any more contributions nor associate with spies for now. If he remained quiet and out of sight, their attention would gradually fade away. He needed to be on guard against those who were patient enough to observe him further. Afterward, Liu Xingchen left as he had things to do. Jiang Hao went to report the previous incident. He received a heaven rejuvenating pill, 16,000 spirit stones, and a spirit sword. The selling price of the spirit sword was 4,600 spirit stones, and the heaven rejuvenation pill could be sold for 7,400 spirit stones. He earned a total of 28,000 spirit stones just from that. For a moment, Jiang Hao was somewhat shocked. It was unexpected. He had around 39,000 spirit stones with him. The total would come around 6 to 7,000 spirit stones. It's late. Otherwise, I could have tied the spirit beast up. In the evening, he found the spirit beast. By dawn, he tied it up. Master, again? I've been waiting for so long. This time, keep me tied for longer, the spirit beast said excitedly. Jiang Hao glanced at it but didn't pay it much attention. Still, he sealed its power to prevent any accidents from happening. He needed to tell Xiao Li to be careful too. It was now mid-July. The beast was tied up for over 3 months, until early October. It cost 810 spirit stones. This should be the last time. That day, the spirit beast ate the spirit stones from morning till night without any protest. It patted its belly contentedly. I want more. This is not enough. Jiang Hao looked at it but didn't pay much attention. A month went by, and the spirit beast became more familiar with the routine. Eating the spirit stones became easier. Xiao Li sat on its side. Beast, what does it taste like? Share a bit with me. Master, Xiao Li wants to snatch my food, the spirit beast shouted. Xiao Li was startled. Jiang Hao hurried over. No, I didn't. Xiao Li raised her empty hands to show him. I didn't do anything. The peaches are ripe, Jiang Hao said to her. You can have them. Yes. I'll have the peaches, Xiao Li immediately said. The next day, Xiao Li sat on his side and nibbled at a spirit stone. Jiang Hao looked at her and frowned. He flicked her lightly on the head with a bamboo stick. That ISNT for eating. Oh. Xiao Li touched her head. A month later, in early October, Jiang Hao had spent 65,611 spirit stones. He gave an extra piece to Xiao Li. That day, when he walked into the hallway, he saw a golden bubble. As he walked over to it, the bubble merged into his body. Golden Legend +1, Jiang Hao glanced at his panel. Golden Legend, 2 halves, can be obtained. I wonder what he'll get this time. He wasn't in a hurry to get the ability. He wanted to send Xiao Li and the spirit beast away before he could get it. Xiao Li always came over for a visit because she always hung around the spirit beast. Just in case, he gave her the 9 nether. It was sealed with the might of a true dragon and the abyssal dragon pearl, so it remained as obedient as ever. Chapter 761. No one dares to ask for the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. Xiao Li sat at the table and tapped on the bead. Down. The 9 nether inside immediately crouched down. Bark. The 9 nether turned into a dog and started barking. Although there was no sound, Xiao Li was very happy. B0x. In just over a month, the 9 nether had begun to respond. Jiang Hao was surprised. When he tried to communicate with it, it didn't cooperate well. When did this start happening? A few days after Xiao Li got the bead, she felt bored because the 9 nether remained lifeless. At that time, she went to Jiang Hao to return it because it was no fun. It might have been from that moment that the 9 nether had begun to understand human speech. Now that it listened to Xiao Li, Jiang Hao was pleased. Remember this at all times, the bead cannot be too far from you. It must always be kept close to you, Jiang Hao said. She nodded vigorously. After that, he looked at the spirit beast. If Xiao Li didn't want to play with the 9 nether, he would take it back and try to communicate with it. He said as much aloud to both Xiao and the 9 nether. Jiang Hao understood that the 9 nether was willing to follow Xiao Li and was reluctant to be near the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl and the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. After sending the two away, Jiang Hao returned to his room. He checked his surroundings and closed his eyes. He opened the Golden Legend. In an instant, the world around Jiang Hao changed. A circle began forming under his feet, then it began to spread. It instigated the change of the sun and moon and the merging and separation of the earth. The circle kept expanding and encompassed the entire earth. Within the circle, there was something else. After some time, the circle began to materialize. Finally, it soared into the sky and turned into a black and white bracelet. It fell in front of Jiang Hao. The moment he lifted the bracelet, everything around him disappeared. The black and white bracelet lay quietly in his hand. He appraised it and immediately received the feedback. Yin-Yang bracelet, Yin imprisons without release, and Yang releases without entry. It has evolved in accordance with the changes of the world. The feedback was clear enough. It's a cage with no entry or exit. Jiang Hao was puzzled. What was the use of such a thing? He went to the courtyard and surrounded the heavenly fragrance Dao flower with the bracelet. The Yang function was activated. With a snap of his fingers, the power was blocked. After attaching the Yang function to himself, he found it easy to step out. But no one else could enter. The range was so broad that nothing could infiltrate from the sky or the ground. After using half of his power, he found that it could be moved slightly. It was like he was trying to squeeze in. Then, he activated the Yin function to enclose himself. Unlike before, he could enter without any obstacles but couldn't leave the circle. It can be used as a defensive barrier, but it's not a magical treasure. I don't know what it's actually used for. Jiang Hao thought for a moment but couldn't understand where it could be used. So far, it wasn't useful for anything. If it was meant for a person, the heavenly cauldron was more useful. Moreover, it could be activated at any time. This magical treasure's effect wasn't that significant. He could only put it away for now. If there was a chance, he would test the limits of this thing. It was unlikely that this treasure could be shattered. Magical treasures couldn't be destroyed so easily. After storing it away, Jiang Hao went to the spirit herb garden. He resumed his routine. He didn't understand why the sect hadn't contacted him, or why the gathering hadn't been announced yet. There were no new changes from the law enforcement hall either. It seemed like he successfully remained on the suspect list. The sect had no details of what had happened in Devil's Den, so the impact of it was lesser on him. Another 2 months passed by, and it was already early December. The Divine Corpse sect sent a formal message informing them they would arrive in 7 days. 7 days later, Elder Baiji personally went to welcome them. There was no need to intimidate them this time. This time, the Divine Corpse sect was very cooperative and did not cause any commotion. especially when they found that the Mountain Seasword sect was also present. They couldn't understand why the Mountain Seasword sect was here. Moreover, both sides were very polite to each other. Jiang Hao was aware of this matter, but it didn't affect him. With the arrival of the Divine Corpse sect, the Heavenly Note sect had to decide who would enter the Corpse realm. Jiang Hao didn't know how that would be decided, but it didn't have anything to do with him, so he remained indifferent. 7 days later, in mid-December, Jiang Hao finally received a message on the stone tablet. The gathering would be tonight at midnight. It had been almost half a year. This was unexpected. Jiang Hao thought for a moment. He needed to go through everything that happened in the previous gathering and prepare for this one. The location of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl also needed to be discussed. For the past few months, Hong Yuya hadn't visited, so he couldn't ask her either. He could only see what the people in the gathering felt. At midnight, Jiang Hao entered the gathering. Several others had also arrived. Senior Dan Yuan was seated at the top as usual. After exchanging greetings, Jiang Hao and the other 4 sat cross-legged on the floor. "Any issues with your cultivation?" Senior Dan Yuan asked. No one answered. The matter regarding the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl went smoothly. "Have you all received any feedback?" "The Shenyuan sword did indeed act," Gui said. "But I don't know what happened after. I only know that everything went smoothly from my side." "That's all," Zhong said and glanced at Jing. The title of the book he had mentioned had proved to be incredibly influential. She still didn't understand what it was all about. Liu remained silent. Xing said, "I heard there was a purple light at the last moment." Everyone, except Zhong, looked at Jiang Hao. The only person who knew the details was Jing. Jiang Hao looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "The Earth Extreme Silent Pearl is in my possession." The others fell silent. They felt shocked at the next question. "Friend Jing, do you plan to keep the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl with you?" Gui asked. Jiang Hao shook his head slightly. "I haven't decided yet. Wouldn't it be better to hand over such a thing to the Bright Moon sect or the Clear Sky School?" Gui asked again. Well said. Jiang Hao always felt that Gui asked the right questions and played an indispensable role at the gathering. He also thought the same but couldn't suggest it outright because he always maintained a mysterious and powerful impression at the gathering. The group looked at Xing smiled wryly. This situation is too extraordinary. It meant he couldn't intervene. Or perhaps he thought it was better to leave the thing in Jing's hands. It was widely known that since the Heavenly Fate Misfortune Pearl hadn't erupted, the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl had gone dormant as well. Jiang Hao didn't speak up, and neither did the others. Senior Dan Yuan smiled but did not say anything. Jiang Hao had no choice but to keep the pearl with him for now. Others had no way to suppress or seal the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl, so they definitely wouldn't offer to do so recklessly. Involving immortal sects in this matter would be even more complicated, especially since the pearl was temporarily sealed. Jiang Hao also didn't want to have contact with these people, which made the matter even more complex. Hence, no one brought it up. After discussing other matters for a while, the gathering moved on to the next phase. Jiang Hao received the mission reward from Senior Dan Yuan. It was the information on the corpse realm that he had asked for last time. Chapter 762, Speculations. He had asked for information about the corpse realm in the previous gathering. Although many things could be obtained from Zhuang Yuzhen, it was just one side of the story, after all. His information was limited to the north, while Senior Dan Yuan's information was much clearer. The thing with Zhuang Yuzhen was that nobody could persuade him to disclose information he knew. After a brief look, he discovered that some were speculations from various departments, while others described internal situations. B0x. But nothing seemed too striking, except for the end, which seemed to be about finding a person. He memorized all the text. Later, he recalled it from memory after leaving. This time, Senior Dan Yuan didn't mention any related tasks. The task was still about the sage's page. No one had the intention to search for more during this time, so there was no need to ask further. After that was the trading phase. Zhong said, I have already found the rough location of the moon wheel and released the information. This task was from Xing. Xing nodded. The sea moon map will be sent to you as per your request. Have any of you found any information about the book thief I mentioned earlier? Zhong asked. Others shook their heads. Jiang Hao lowered his head and hesitated. There was no need for anyone from the West to do anything at the moment. Thus, he didn't need to get involved. He would wait until he needed something. I have a small matter as well, said Gui as she looked at Jing. Is it very difficult to save Yanzichen? Only Jing could answer this question. Everyone knew Jing had recently been to that place. Hao remained silent for a moment. He was caught by mistake. Gui was speechless. But she got her answer. It was possible to reclaim Yanzichen after all. She then asked Jing what he needed in exchange. To this, Jiang Hao only asked about Yang Shong's recent situation. Gui informed him that Yang Shong had been living her life as usual, without any changes. This surprised Jiang Hao a bit. He hadn't expected Feng Hua to remain so calm. However, he didn't mind. There was no need to provoke the other person. Although he was curious, he just nodded and didn't say anything. After that, no one had any tasks or questions. Everyone had been too caught up in the matter of the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl recently. Upon learning that the pearl was with Jing, they breathed a sigh of relief. The end of all things disappeared. It is said that someone annihilated them, and it seems like everything they had was taken away, Gui said. What things? Jiang Hao suddenly thought of the Earth Extreme Heart-Devouring Pearl. The end of all things was using that to locate the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl. It's the work of the people from the 4 great immortal sects. Some of them will be wandering outside, Xing said. It is no wonder the southern region has been so quiet lately. Even the Great Thousand God sect is not as active as it used to be, Gui said. Jiang Hao listened quietly. He didn't know that the end of all things was annihilated in the south, nor that the Great Thousand God sect had gone quiet. Someone is in the south, said Liu. The Shangguan family overseas seems to have come to the south to find someone. It is said that they want to find someone who can suppress the curse of their family. The people from the Shangguan family are in the south. Gui was excited. Apparently, she was very interested in their curse. Do you think their curse could be suppressed or removed? Liu asked curiously. Gui thought for a while. I remember that it is the 100 Nights curse. It recurs every 3 months and cannot be avoided. This curse is not an ordinary one. I don't think I can help with it. Gui looked at Senior Dan Yuan. Senior, is the origin of this curse important? Everyone looked at him. Jiang Hao was also very curious. He knew who exactly was in the south. It was Shangguan Qingsu, who had betrayed Feng Hua. He had suppressed her curse before. So, there was a certain possibility that they were here for him. As for the 100 Nights curse, he had no clue. The 100 Nights is not an ordinary curse. It cannot be removed by conventional means because it is connected to an entity behind it. The source is difficult to eliminate, said Senior Dan Yuan with a smile. Jiang Hao and others were surprised. So, that was how it was. I heard that the one with the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment realm is in the west, but no one has found her. Some speculate that the Bright Moon sect has obscured the trails of the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment Cultivator so that powerful people can't find her, said Zhong. Jiang Hao and the others felt that the Bright Moon sect was so bold because of that. They had released the one with the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment into the world while she was still growing. After that, they talked about some small matters. Liu specifically mentioned Kai Tian. It seemed he had already been welcomed by Heavenly King Taomu. It seems like he might rise up the ranks soon. Jiang Hao couldn't help but feel surprised. Kai Tian was actually very efficient. Perhaps he was not satisfied with his achievements. He also felt that Kai Tian might already be plotting against him. He didn't care about that. He just needed information. He needed it because he had to report to Hong Yuye. It wasn't yet time to venture out. He needed to wait until he became stronger. After the gathering ended, Jiang Hao immediately began to record the information about the corpse realm in his notebook. It took some time, but he finally wrote down everything. There hadn't been many things to discuss at the gathering this time. Everyone didn't seem particularly interested in the Earth Extreme Silent Pearl now that it was safe. The one with the Heavenly Tao Foundation establishment had special protection, and it wasn't easy to find her location. People from the Shangguan family were coming for him. They probably were looking for smiling San Sheng. After that, there was nothing else to think about. The southern region had become much quieter, and many things had come to an end. Jiang Hao started reviewing the information he had received. The Corpse Realm was a special realm accidentally discovered by the founder of the Divine Corpse sect. They paid a huge price to find the way in. That same year, they perfected the 9 Extremes corpse dissecting method at the top of the Heavenly Steely Mountain and obtained many treasures from there. To gain a better understanding of the Corpse Realm, the Divine Corpse sect was founded. There was no record of the Corpse Realm in any of the classics. To find more information from the Mountain Seasword sect, they used the information of the Corpse Realm as an exchange. However, there was too little information. To learn more, they went to all the sects in the north, then later to the Clear Sky School and the Bright Moon sect in the east, but were unable to successfully access all the information. In the west, they paid a huge price and managed to access sufficient information. At that time, they found a clue. But no one knew what this clue was. People only knew that the Corpse Realm concealed something, yet there was not a single record about it. The founder later entered the Corpse Realm and never came out again. Jiang Hao looked at the books. These were probably some outside information about the situation. There wasn't any clear explanation. Instead, there were only speculations. Some said the Corpse Realm was a corner of the Great World, while others claimed it was a passage connecting to other worlds. Furthermore, some speculated that the Corpse Realm was a vast secret realm protected by a huge formation. There was another assumption suggesting that the Corpse Realm was the cave of a mighty figure, but this mighty figure's whereabouts were unknown. Chapter 763. 17 years had passed. Jiang Hao frowned and looked at the information about the Corpse Realm. The assumptions were extraordinary, but speculations were, after all, just speculations. Moreover, it didn't affect him. Whether it was about other worlds or someone's cave, there were currently no powerful beings involved. So, he could enter while evading disasters. B0x. That was enough. The rest of the information was not very useful. He couldn't determine what would happen upon his entry. Then, he continued reading the information in the notebook. The Corpse Realm was separated from the outside world by a vast formation. Beneath this formation lay an area unknown to people. According to some individuals from the Divine Corpse sect, it might be an ocean. A never-ending and impassable sea. People in the north had the same view, but some in the west claimed to see glacier. If he entered the Corpse Realm at the peak of return to Void Realm, he might even come across these things. However, there was a high chance he might fall into them and never come out. The most incomprehensible aspect of the Corpse Realm was the Heavenly Steely Mountain. It possessed sovereign abilities, and countless powerful laws were hidden within. Most mysterious was the stone tablet at the very top. It was said that the imprint on the Heavenly Steely could be used to peer into the other side of the Corpse Realm. However, no one had attempted it. The founder of the Divine Corpse sect regretted not leaving an imprint on the Heavenly Steely. However, based on the records he left behind, they found a way to stay in the Corpse Realm. To better explore the secrets of the Corpse Realm, they ventured into the Corpse Sea. Regarding the Corpse Realm, perhaps the Heavenly Spirit tribe might know a lot, but their clan had no relevant records. If one truly wanted to understand the Corpse Realm, one could go to the coast of the Corpse Sea and seek the founder. Perhaps, they might still be alive. Jiang Hao frowned. This was similar to what Zhuang Yuzhen had mentioned. With higher cultivation, it was easier to see things inside. However, this information talked about glacier. Zhuang Yuzhen saw the sea. Yet, what concerned him most was the founder of the Divine Corpse sect. He was within the Corpse Realm. He might still be alive. The only question was, where was the coastline of the Corpse Sea? And was it related to the sea Zhuang Yuzhen saw there? Everything was uncertain. Jiang Hao put away the book. He couldn't determine anything and had to set it aside for the time being. He had gone to check, but it seemed the blossoming of the corpse realm flowers wouldn't happen anytime soon. Unlike last time, there were no arrogant individuals from the divine corpse sect. Jiang Hao was content with this. However, after a few days, he heard that someone from the Heavenly Gate sect was going to visit the Heavenly Note sect. The Heavenly Gate sect was a major sect in the southern region. It was even more prominent than the Black Heaven sect. It could be considered one of the top sects in the south. Perhaps the rise of the Grand Earth Emperor had ruffled them. As the corpse realm flowers were about to blossom, they were visiting. Their intentions were evident. Jiang Hao didn't know much about the sect, but he needed to be on his guard. The Heavenly Note sect was exemplary in the south and the Heavenly Gate sect was even more prominent than that. Fortunately, they hadn't arrived yet. After that, Jiang Hao resumed his normal days. There was no need to think much about the gathering, and the sect also didn't require anything from him. Feng Hua and others had gone quiet. Everyone was either cultivating or getting stronger. There was nothing much to be concerned about. The only thing to worry about was perhaps Lin Ji and Chu Chuan. They had been out for a long time and hadn't returned to the sect. The coming days were indeed peaceful. Winter passed, spring arrived, and 5 months swiftly flew by. With time, some things changed along with it. Jiang Hao's bubbles were among those things. Every day there would be white bubbles, and every 7 days, there would be blue bubbles. Occasionally, they appeared at irregular times. In these 5 months, nothing unexpected occurred, and more people from the sect began to return. Those who had previously gained opportunities began to venture out. Jiang Hao opened his eyes from his cultivation. He breathed a sigh of relief and then closed his eyes again. At noon, he opened his eyes once more. His cultivation felt steady. He took a look at his interface. Name, Jiang Hao, age, 36, cultivation level. Peak of the return to the Void Realm, cultivation method, Heavenly Sound 100 revolutions, Hongmeng Heart Sutra, divine ability, 9 revolutions death substitution, unique, daily appraisal clear and pure heart, reappearance of hidden spirit, divine might, revival of withered tree, heavenly cauldron, indestructible Vaja, life force, 3-100, cannot be cultivated, cultivation, 0-100, cannot be cultivated, divine abilities, 1/3, cannot be obtained. 36 years old, Jiang Hao felt somewhat sentimental. When he was 19, he had first met Hong Yuye. From then on, his life hadn't been the same. His cultivation also began to skyrocket around that time. In just 17 years, he leaped from the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm to the peak of return to Void Realm. He might be able to step into the Immortal Ascension platform before he reached 40. If he could tend to spirit herbs in the same way, he could attempt to advance when he reached 38. In the afternoon, Jiang Hao restored the reappearance of hidden spirit and replenished 2 attack techniques in his wrist guards. That day, he also took the spirit beast to the spirit herb garden. Have Lin Ji and the others returned? Jiang Hao asked. They have. One came back looking completely beaten, while the other broke through to the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, said the spirit beast. Jiang Hao was surprised and asked for details. They said they met a righteous immortal on the way and ended up fighting. They were chased for over half a year and only managed to get back now. One could only take a beating, while the other became stronger the more they fought. The spirit beast shook its head and sighed. They ended up like that because they didn't invoke my name. Otherwise, my friends in the cultivation path would have helped, and they wouldn't have been chased. Jiang Hao glanced at the spirit beast but didn't say anything else. Lin Ji seemed to run into such encounters frequently. If the spirit beast didn't accompany them, they would be chased longer. It was still all right. They could learn from their experience. This way, even when descending the mountain, they would understand what mattered more. How is Xiao Li's pet? Jiang Hao asked about the 9 nether. Behaving. It shows me respect, said the spirit beast as it munched on a carrot. Jiang Hao nodded. It seemed the 9 nether was still obedient. However, He still needed to pay close attention to avoid any problems. He had to check if the seal had weakened. If it had, it meant it had a lot on its mind. On the way, Jiang Hao received a message. It was from his master. Someone was going to visit the spirit herb garden, and Jiang Hao was asked to make the necessary preparations. Who wants to visit the spirit herb garden? Jiang Hao was puzzled. Has anyone visited the sect recently? He asked the spirit beast. The spirit beast swiveled its collar around its neck. Yes. Someone from the Heavenly Gate sect. They are not my friends. Master, be careful. But you can try mentioning my name. Everyone knows about Lord Beat's reputation. Perhaps they've heard of it and might show you respect. People from the Heavenly Gate sect? Jiang Hao was surprised. He had been focused on the bubbles these past few days because he was on the verge of advancement. He hadn't expected people from the Heavenly Gate sect to arrive already. Although their arrival wasn't helpful, it should be alright as long as he did his part. After the visit, they probably wouldn't have any further interactions. Chapter 764. Why invite humiliation upon oneself? At the Spirit Herb Garden, Jiang Hao glanced at the people working inside. Most were ordinary folks, with a few outer disciples, but not even 1/10 of them. He had examined each of these individuals. There wasn't any problem with them. If there were any, it might be because someone outside was influencing them. Jiang Hao treated these people as well as he could. That was all he could do. However, even so, they might not necessarily live for long. B0x. Various things could happen within the Heavenly Note sect, and they could be exploited. It would ultimately lead to their tragedy. Every time, Jiang Hao reminded himself to become stronger as soon as possible. Only then could he control matters of his life and death. Is there any problem today? Jiang Hao asked Cheng Chou. The spirit herb has withered, Cheng Chou said. Jiang Hao frowned. Who does the spirit herb belong to? Flowing Waterfall. Do they know about it? They haven't found out yet. Jiang Hao hesitated for a moment and went to check. It was a valuable spirit herb. He had a feeling that there might be some problems with the herb. It was still uncertain whether it was due to planting methods or other problems. He decided to set it aside for now and not rush to inform anyone. He would deal with it after the Heavenly Gate sect's visit. However, representatives from Flowing Waterfall arrived. This time, it was a middle-stage Golden Core Realm cultivator. His cultivation was as strong as Jiang Hao at this level. His only request was to see the spirit herb and assess the situation. Senior brother, could you come back another day? Jiang Hao asked. It's not that I mind, but the person in charge has insisted that I inspect the herbs today, said the person helplessly. It seemed like they were instructed to follow orders at all costs. Jiang Hao glanced at the sky. He felt that time was running short. Senior brother, come with me, Jiang Hao said politely. He later asked for the person's name, which was Chu Wenwu. Soon, they arrived in front of the withered spirit herb. Chu Wenwu looked surprised. Junior brother, what's this about? This is your spirit herb. Due to some reason, the herb has withered, so we had to transplant it for now, said Jiang Hao. He slipped some spirit stones into Chu Wenwu's hands. Chu Wenwu had intended to get angry, but he only appeared helpless now. Junior brother, I was instructed to inspect and report back. I have my own difficulties. I hope you understand. He discreetly returned the spirit stones to Jiang Hao. If it's just a routine matter, you can return, senior brother. It won't be a problem tomorrow or the day after, said Jiang Hao. I do hope you understand, junior brother. I can see that you are busy, but I had to come and check. Please don't make things difficult for me. Chu Wenwu looked around as if he could sense something amiss. Jiang Hao nodded in understanding. Someone was targeting him. But there was something he didn't understand. How did they do it? Did they tamper with the spirit herb last night, or did they know that the Heavenly Gate sect would visit at this time? Making a fuss wouldn't benefit him in any way. The other person might not benefit either. It depended on who was less willing to escalate things. Then, how do you think we should handle things, senior brother? Chu Wenwu thought for a moment. Well, I was asked to ask for compensation if there was something wrong with the herbs. A compensation for not only the damaged herbs but also for incurring a loss due to such a delay. What if we can't agree? Then, I am supposed to go back and report to seniors. Jiang Hao nodded. He discreetly gave back the spirit stones and even added 2 healing talismans. Then, I must trouble you, senior brother, to make a trip again. We're only free in the afternoon. You don't need to overthink it. Just visit like you would normally. Chu Wenwu was surprised. After hesitating for a while, he accepted the talismans and spirit stones. This was quite a lot. Then, I'll take my leave. After I return, I'll honestly report about the spirit herb. He implied that he wouldn't report anything bad. Jiang Hao thanked him and asked the spirit beast to accompany him. The spirit beast's presence somewhat helped. After that, Jiang Hao waited. Senior brother Bai Yi arrived with a group of disciples at the spirit herb garden at noon. There was a middle-aged man and 4 young cultivators. In total, there were 3 men and 1 woman. When Jiang Hao saw them, he could sense that they thought highly of themselves. The more he looked, the more pronounced their attitude became. In front of major sects, the Heavenly Note sect was indeed mediocre. They couldn't compare in terms of cultivator's strength or the spirit herb garden. The Heavenly Note sect was a sect assembled in a short time. Such a sect could barely be considered huge. The Heavenly Note sect had improved over the years and managed to secure a top position. Even though their foundation was not very good, and their overall strength was lacking, Elder Beiji's leadership was remarkable. She had helped the sect progress significantly. But even so, in front of these major sects, the Heavenly Note sect was still considered a small, rustic sect. Jiang Hao bowed respectfully and silently stepped aside. As a mere inner sect disciple responsible for tending the spirit herb garden, he didn't have the qualification to show these guests around. That was senior brother Bai Yi's responsibility. As a true disciple and senior of the Cliff of Broken Hearts, he held significant status. Jiang Hao's role was to follow behind. Senior, please, our Cliff of Broken Hearts spirit herb garden is somewhat small and not comparable to your esteemed sect. If any areas need improvement, please feel free to tell us, Bai Yi said respectfully. You're too polite, the middle-aged man said. After that, they walked inside. After a while, they stopped in front of a particular spirit herb. It was the fragrant nether flower, which was a relatively common spirit herb. Why place the fragrant nether flower under the scorching sun? Asked the woman in the group. Wouldn't that ruin the fragrant nether flower? Fragrant nether flowers prefer shade. The scorching sun will affect it and might lead to the production of toxins. Your sect lacks even such basic knowledge? I heard that many people in the Heavenly Note sect have some kind of mental issues. This might be the reason, said a man. The toxins from the fragrant nether flower can disturb the mind. I used to think that some people's unstable mental state was due to cultivation techniques, but now it seems it's due to a lack of common knowledge about spirit herbs. A few of them chuckled softly. Nonsense, said the middle-aged man. This spirit herb is being cultivated very well. Perhaps, there's a reason for this, right, Bai Yi? He looked at Bai Yi as though he was praising him while the others shamed his sect. Jiang Hao remained indifferent. Bai Yi calmly said, Senior, you're right. Indeed, there is a reason. I wonder what that is, said Yin Xuanyi. She was the only woman among them. It is inconvenient to disclose, said Bai Yi. It's only natural to learn from each other, said the middle-aged man, Nai Shanju. Then, he looked at Jiang Hao. Young friend, you work here, right? So, you might know the reason behind it for sure. Bai Yi wanted to speak, but the man said again, Young friend, are you unwilling to share so we can all learn from each other? Bai Yi couldn't say anything. Jiang Hao knew the pressure was now on him. He agreed with the woman. The fragrant nether flower was supposed to be grown in the shade. However, Miao Tinglian had wanted to move it here, so he couldn't say anything. She even explained the reasons for it that he could have never even thought of. Young friend, be bold and speak up, Nai Shanju said with a smile. The other 4 looked on as if watching a play. Jiang Hao sighed. Why bother? There was no need to provoke cultivators who were not from the same place. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories